age of Komara. There are demons who are killed, like Putana. We're hearing about Shaktasura and Trinavarta who are being killed by Krishna in the morning Bhagavatam class, literally being killed. And in others like the Jamalarjuna trees were liberated, and so on. And then when Krishna reaches the Pogunda age, more pastimes, demon-killing pastimes take place. But today we're going to read an interesting one. It's called Extinguishing the Forest Fire. There are two pastimes regarding the extinguishing of the forest fire. And I'm not sure which one this is we're taking up. Let's have a look. This is, okay, after the subduing of Kaliya serpent, after Krishna killed the Kaliya serpent, then he, after being in the lake for quite some time, he went to the some hill, Dashadvita or something. This hill where Sanatana Goswami has established the Madan Mohan temple, and there the Lord rested for a while. And then shortly after that, they went to the forest, and then there was a great forest fire, which we hear about. King Parikshit, after hearing of the chastisement of Kaliya, inquired from Shukadeva Goswami as to why Kaliya left his beautiful land, and why Garuda was so antagonistic towards him. So here we're hearing a history of the, prior to the, you could say, the chastisement of the Kaliya serpent. How is it he ended up in the Oxbow Lake, in the offshoot of the Jamuna River? How did he end up there? What was the cause? He was in the form of a great serpent with many hoods. And Sukadeva Goswami informed the king that the island known as Nagalaya was inhabited by serpents, and that Kaliya was one of the chief serpents there. Being accustomed to eating snakes, Garuda used to come to this island and kill many serpents at will. Some of them he actually ate, but some were unnecessarily killed. The reptile society became so disturbed that their leader, Vasuki, appealed to Lord Brahma for protection. Lord Brahma made an arrangement by which Garuda would not create a disturbance. On each half-moon day, the reptile community would offer a serpent to Garuda. The serpent was to be kept underneath a tree as a sacrificial offering to Garuda. Garuda was satisfied with this offering, and therefore he did not disturb any other serpents. But gradually, Kaliya took advantage of this situation. He was unnecessarily puffed up by the volume of his accumulated poison, as well as by his material power. And he thought, why should Garuda be offered the sacrifice? He then ceased offering any sacrifice. Instead, he himself ate the offering intended for Garuda. When Garuda, the great devotee carrier of Vishnu, understood that Kaliya was eating the offered sacrifices, he became very angry and rushed to the island to kill the offensive serpent. Kaliya tried to fight Garuda and faced him with his many hoods and poisonous sharp teeth. Kaliya attempted to bite him, and Garuda, the son of Taksha, in great anger and with the great force befitting the carrier of Lord Vishnu, struck the body of Kaliya with his effulgent golden wings. Kaliya, who is also known as Kadru Sutta, son of Kadru, immediately fled to the lake known as Kaliyahrada, which lay within the Yamuna river and which Garuda could not approach. Kaliya took shelter within the water of the Yamuna for the following reason. Just as Garuda went to the island of the Kaliya snake, he also used to go to the Yamuna to catch fish to eat. There was, however, a great yogi known as Shobhari Muni, who used to meditate within the water and who was sympathetic with the fish. He asked Garuda not to come there and disturb the fish. Although Garuda was not under anyone's order, being the carrier of Lord Vishnu, he did not disobey the order of the great yogi. Instead of staying and eating many fish, he carried off one big fish, who was their leader. Shobhari Muni was sorry that one of the leaders of the fish was taken away by Garuda, and thinking of their protection, he cursed Garuda with the following words: "Henceforward, from this day, if Garuda comes here to catch fish, then I say this with all my strength, he will immediately be killed." This curse was known only to Kalia. Kali was therefore confident that Garuda would not be able to come there, and so he thought it wise to take shelter of the lake within the Yamuna. But Kalia's taking shelter of Shobhari Muni was not successful. He was driven away from the Yamuna by Krishna, the master of Garuda. It may be noted that Garuda is directly related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and is so powerful that he is never subject to anyone's order of or curse. Actually, the cursing of Garuda, who is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam to be of the stature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, was an offense on the part of Shobhari Muni. Although Garuda did not try to retaliate, the Muni was not saved from his offensive act against a great Vaishnava personality. Due to this offense, Shobhari fell down from his yogic position and afterwards became a householder, a sense enjoyer in the material world. The fall down of Shobhari Muni, who was supposed to be absorbed in spiritual bliss by meditation, is an instruction to the offender of Vaishnavas. When Krishna finally came out of the Kalia lake, he was seen by all of his friends and relatives on the bank of the Yamuna. He appeared before them nicely decorated, smeared all over with chandan pop, bedecked with valuable jewels and stones, and almost completely covered with gold. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the cowherd boys and men, the gopis, Mother Yasoda, Maharaj Nanda, and all the cows and calves, saw Krishna coming from the Yamuna, and it was as though they had recovered their very life. When a person regains his life, naturally he becomes absorbed in pleasure and joyfulness. They each in turn pressed Krishna to their chests, and thus they felt a great relief. Mother Yasoda, Rohini, Maharaj Nanda, and the cowherd men became so happy that they embraced Krishna and thought they had achieved their ultimate goal of life. Balaram also embraced Krishna, but he was laughing, because when everyone else was so overwhelmed with anxiety, he had known what would happen to Krishna. All the trees on the bank of the Yamuna, along with all the cows, bulls and cows, were full of pleasure because of Krishna's appearance there. The Brahmin inhabitants of Vrindavan immediately came with their wives to congratulate Krishna and his family members. And because Brahmins are considered to be the spiritual masters of society, they offered their blessings to Krishna and his family on account of Krishna's release. They also asked Maharaj Nanda to give them some charity on that occasion. Being so pleased by Krishna's return, Maharaj Nanda gave many cows and much gold in charity to the Brahmins. While Nanda Maharaj was thus engaged, Mother Yasoda simply embraced Krishna and made him sit on her lap while she shed tears incessantly. It was interesting, this island where Kalia had previously been residing before he was ran away, being attacked by Garuda. Of course, he left that beautiful island. What was it called? Ramantaka, is it? Ramantaka? I think it was called Ramantaka Island. When Srila Prabhupada was in Fiji on a few occasions, he actually installed the deities of Krishna Kalia in Fiji, Krishna dancing on the heads of Kalia. And he confirmed that this island was actually the island of Kalia. And there's many local folklores also which describe this many-hooded serpent being seen high up in the mountains of Fiji. There's even on the stone on one of the rock faces, or mountain faces, is almost like an engraving of a great serpent with many hoods there. So it's generally understood that that place, now Fiji, was the island of Kalia. Since it was almost night and all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the cows and calves, were very tired, they decided to take their rest on the river bank. In the middle of the night, while they were taking rest, there was suddenly a great forest fire, and it quickly appeared that the fire would soon devour all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. As soon as they felt the warmth of the fire, they immediately took shelter of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he was playing just like their child. They began to say, "Our dear Krishna, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, our dear Balaram, the reservoir of all strength, please try to save us from this all-devouring and devastating fire. We have no shelter other than you. This devastating fire will swallow us all." Thus they prayed to Krishna, saying that they could not take any shelter other than his lotus feet. Lord Krishna, being compassionate upon his own townspeople, immediately swallowed up the whole forest fire and saved them. This was not impossible for Krishna, because he is unlimited. He has unlimited power to do anything he desires. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A very short pastime of the swallowing of the forest fire, or extinguishing the forest fire. Haribo, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go Premanandi. Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
We're finished.
So it's finished?
Finished, yeah, we're finished.
Finished.
Yeah, finished.
No question?
Huh?
No question?
Oh, yeah, if you want to.
Yeah. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that this pastime helps in times of conflicts between devotees.
Yes, it's there are two pastimes of swallowing the forest fire, and one of them, this one or the other, I'm not sure. One of them specifically is described as it, because there's always, and of course we're in that situation all the time in this world of conflict between religions, conflict between even groups of the same sampradaya, conflicts between members of the same association within the sampradaya, conflicts within members within the same group, within the same sampradaya. There's all kinds of different conflicts at all levels. There's conflicts within our own minds, also in our own hearts. The blazing fire, is Kali Yuga is the age of quarrel. So there's like a blazing fire in our hearts. In this regards, what can we say? This is a big subject matter of neophyte mentality, where one sees that one's own is the only one, and not to say it isn't, but one tends to see it like that, and it's oftentimes it results in conflict, arguments, and so on and so forth, because we're still under the influence of the modes of nature. We're not transcendental, and to a certain extent, of course, to protect the child from other influences, it may be naturally it's required. It's not that as the child grows up it needs to be protected necessarily from those influences, but when a young child, a boy or a girl, usually when they're very young, they have to be carefully protected by the parents. They don't get into bad association or misled, whatever it may be. They be very careful. So, but of course when growing up then it's a little different. But the principle is that generally in the neophyte stages these things unfortunately will take place. But to resolve these unnecessary or these, say, detrimental conflicts or immature misunderstandings between different Vaishnavas, particularly Vaishnavas we can say, for others, well, you would say it's mostly the modes of nature at work. But amongst Vaishnavas, when they're both trying to, or they think we're trying to advance in Krishna consciousness and conflicts take place, it's not very favorable for the nurturing of pure devotional service. So hearing these pastimes, and this one of the forest fire, particularly Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes this anartha, or unwanted state or attitude, how that can be removed. And of course it's not just like that, but by hearing very attentively this pastime of Krishna swallowing up the forest fire. Conflicts between devotees are just like a fire. They also describe in the material world, conflicts usually end up in fiery interaction. So swallowing up the fire by the Lord is helps by hearing this to overcome this tendency of quarrels or misunderstandings between various religions, various sampradayas, various groups within the sampradaya, and various parties within the groups within the sampradaya, etc. Yeah. All these pastimes represent various anarthas, and by hearing for the right source is essential if we want to progress towards pure devotional service, towards developing an eternal relationship with Krishna. These are Naimitika pastimes. They're pastimes related to you could say, the material energy, Bhoma Vrindavan. They do not take place on the spiritual plane, only in conceptual form, not in reality. But on this platform, they actually take place, and by hearing about them, it helps us to overcome those very anarthas which we ourselves may be affected by, whether it's hatred for other living entities or envy of other living entities, and so on, as represented perhaps by Kaliya. Different demons represent pride and envy and greed and licentious behavior, attachment to intoxications, and so many. And false guru, we've been hearing about Putana, the false guru, and Shakadasura, the load bearer, and Trinavarta also holding on to old and new habits which are not favorable to Krishna consciousness, so on and so forth. All these various demons represent remaining youthful frivolity, that's Asura, and so on, like that. Agasura, very cruel, and hatred for others. They all represent various anarthas. And by here, he said, if we pray to Krishna with sincerity and hear these pastimes, that these various anarthas can be removed from our heart. Because without removing the anarthas, where is the question of developing love of Godhead? Pure devotional service really only starts after anartha nivritti. Right now we're in the mixed stage, under the direction of a pure devotee. We follow their pure instructions, and the path is by the mercy of Krishna as well, but we make progress in spiritual life beyond anartha. But we have to be willing to let go. It's not a mechanical process only. We have to be willing to let go of those anarthas and take the necessary steps to become free of them. And this is one of them, to hear these pastimes with a submissive heart and to pray to Krishna who can kill these various demons in our hearts. And there are some demons killed by Balaram. That is another kind of angle of removal of anarthas in our hearts. So one has to take serious direction or serious shelter. The spiritual master, one has to make one's own serious endeavor for those demons to be killed in our hearts. So, the path, stepping is an important path. That's why in the Kumara age mostly we see so many, not Kumara, in the Boganda age, so many demons being killed, so many anarthas in the childhood. And then in the Kishore age we see mostly also demons are killed there, because in the path, until one comes to the platform of Krishna Prema, even maybe preliminary stages of bhava, risks are still there. Risk is still there. We have to be very careful on the path to recognize these various enemies in our heart and root them out, not allow them to become, let's say, influential in our lives. They're already there. They've been influential throughout many lifetimes. No, we're trying to have the direction of Guru and Krishna as our direction, Guru, Krishna, Sadhu, Shastra, and so on, as our guiding light in our lives, and not the inimical or the demoniac tendencies that we have, and the influences from outside also. These are the various demons. Where Prahlad Maharaj said the only demons are these demons within our heart: lust and greed, anger, envy, pride. madness, illusion, and so on like that. They have to be rooted out. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anything else?
It looks like when I'm looking, was there so much between Prabhupada disciples? Was there a lot of like envy or pride? It didn't look like that.
Well, we don't want to sort of become, as if there's no progress in spiritual life whatsoever or something. It was just like a madhouse. Of course it wasn't, because the center was on Prabhupada, on devotional service. There wasn't, you could say there wasn't really much excuse. We were so busy engaged in service, no time to think about all these, whatever, anarthas in our hearts. But yes, there were certain incidences when, under certain conditions, pride is always there, and that's when it's absolutely pure devotee of the Lord. There's bound to be an element of pride and envy of others. So sometimes it comes out when we forget the goal, when we take our vision off the real purpose of, let's say, our efforts to serve. We start putting ourselves in the center, start thinking of things in relation with myself, then envy and pride are likely to occur. So there were, and there always will be. Even during the presence of Krishna, there was so much envy and pride not just between the demons, even sometimes when one would see it amongst aspiring devotees. And during Prabhupada's time, during Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj's time, that may occur sometimes. It may do. But not the prominent thing. But it was there. It's always there. As long as there's material consciousness, there's bound to be an influence of these enemies, lust and greed. Lust was old, of course it's still there. It's always there in this material world. The all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. Fall down. Greed of thinking, I want for myself, I want recognition and what have you. And envy and pride. And anger, yes, anger is definitely there when we don't get our way. It's positive, these various inimical attitudes can be positive in devotional service, to at least envy is not, at our stage, is not something that can really be very positive. You could say envious of someone who's doing very nice service, but not in a negative way, in a way that we wish we could also render nice service like they do to please Krishna. There's a kind of an envy, but that's a sort of a purified form. Other things, lust and greed, all these different things, can be used in Krishna's service in various ways.
It looks like to me, maybe I'm wrong, Maharaj. Sometimes it looks like it's mixed. For example, I have something, a particular point sometimes to myself that, let's say there's a particular person in a particular situation that like awakens something in me, and there is some kind of very thing that are very bad, that can go very bad, but also it can bring sometimes some. I'm wondering if like it's mixed between like anarthas and sometimes some just points that are very dear to us that I think for example for society but not to be imposed but like something that are very dear to us.
Yeah, there's going to be a mixture of let's say, influences on our consciousness, past tendencies which we have, impressions we have of whether the society is our own society of the movement, and we're concerned for whatever reason or for the world around us, family affairs, or how the society thinks, and so on and so forth, whether it's within our own organization or within the greater society, mixed with the various tendencies which we have from the past for various concepts which we have, and various ways that we see things. Our false ego, of course, is at the root of it. All this is cured when the false ego is purified. The whole process of devotional service is to free us of this false ego, which is seeing things with ourselves in the center, or mundane society in the center, or whatever. extension it may be of this self-centeredness. The devotional service is meant to be offering, even if we don't feel that way. It's a gradual practice of offering everything to Krishna, not to oneself, but to Krishna. To do what we do, but do it for Krishna is not pure devotional service. We may still be attached to a certain activity, to a certain place, from certain whatever. Different attachments may be there, but and they may be there on the subtle platform for gross sense enjoyment, but nonetheless we don't manifest that, hopefully, and then we try to offer whatever we can in the service of Krishna, so gradually becoming purified of this, seeing ourselves in the center, which is a root anartha, you could say, is a root sinful mentality, is to see ourselves in the center, is the cause of all the problems. And the process of devotional service is meant to renovate that let's say, bad situation, that misunderstanding, false ego, and to see things in relationship with Krishna by rendering service to him, worshipping the deity, chanting his names, preaching his glories, rendering him service, and so on, hearing about him, to renovate that use of our free will, this false ego. And it's there. And then, so it's mixed. So some of us, sometimes it's mixed with these other motives, but it's not pure. We still have some concept there which is not pleasing to Krishna in our consciousness. It is the process of devotional service, which means good association, both in what we do and those we do it with and those we hear from and so on. Good association. By bad association we develop all these bad tendencies, and by good association we can develop good ones, favorable to Krishna consciousness. So, social sympathy and attachment to yoga, attachment to good living, attachment to jnana in of itself, that is not as a sub-limb of devotional service, but as a separate endeavor for more and more knowledge. All these things on their own are actually obstacles. Even good health, unless it's engaged in Krishna service, is an obstacle. Good material qualities are an obstacle unless they're engaged in Krishna's service. Maybe that people are very kind materially, maybe they seem to be very generous materially, very compassionate materially, maybe to some degree at least. But what's the use? It's stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, what's the use of all these qualities? Yeah, what's the yasyasti bhaktir bhagavata kanchana? These devotees, no. Yeah, all the good qualities develop in the devotee, even if the materialist has apparently good qualities, they're of no use. They only entangle us in this material world, so what's the use of them all? And similarly, as long as we're holding on to these very mundane sympathies for the mode of goodness or whatever, not to speak of passion and ignorance, even goodness, we're still, attracted to those objects of those modes, and naturally we're going to be bound in this material world. It can take a long time to get released. One has to be willing to take the necessary steps in order to cut those knots of material existence. And the primary knot chindanti kovadas tasya is koyana kirat kate. And chindanti kovadas tasya, how does it go? Anyway, whatever it is. It's to cut those knots of binding us in this material world by hearing about the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to these messages? Kona Kurta Kataratim. We have to hear that katha of Krishna regularly from the right source. There are other things too, of course, but this is the primary emphasis upon hearing the glories of Krishna. We're so keen on hearing our own glories, the glories of the material world, the glories of our friends, or the negative things about our enemies or people we're envious of. We're glad when we hear they're suffering or they die or something. And unfortunately, you can read Bhaktivinoda Thakur takes us through a whole journey in this regards in his writings. various songs. And we're very happy to see the suffering of others and very, very unhappy when they're doing well. Envy and pride are like the same side of, different side of the same coin. And proud looking, we want ourselves in the center. Envy is we don't like to see others in the center. Or they have something which I want. I have to get it. Greed, again, the same thing. We think with the proprietor, we think we're the enjoyer. Lust, think that all the material objects are meant for my pleasure, sense gratification. If we don't get it, we become angry. What is it to become angry about? Nothing belongs to us anyway. Everything belongs to Krishna. When we become angry, except for in the service of Krishna, I mean, there is legitimate anger too. When things are being done which are displeasing to Krishna, for instance, then a devotee may become angry. We can't imitate the pure devotees. We get conquered by anger. The pure devotees use anger in Krishna's service. We have to use anger against our own nonsense, you could say. So, we become angry, generally speaking. We're becoming angry against Krishna in one sense, because everyone's Krishna's part and parcel. Everything is Krishna's energy. Everything belongs to Krishna. So if you become angry at somebody, not because they're offending Krishna, but just because of whatever it is, we're becoming angry at Krishna. They're not satisfying me, but they're not meant to satisfy us. They're meant to satisfy Krishna. If you're angry at someone because they're not listening to me or they're not, whatever it is, not satisfying me, means we're being angry with Krishna. All these various enemies are there, which have to be slain. Doubts in your heart have to be slain with a weapon of knowledge, Krishna said. I am with yoga, stand and fight. Back to yoga. Okay, I'm going to break now. It's 7:40. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi.